You're listening to the Unfucking Work podcast for people professionals, leaders, business owners, and anyone wanting to start their own mutiny and unfuck the workplace. A Work Pirates production with your hosts James Eves and Michelle Minikin. So today's guest, Neil Usher, is an internationally experienced workplace creator and change leader of 30 years, author of 3 books, prolific blogger, and regular conference speaker. It's great to meet you today, Neil. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Delighted to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Our pleasure. But it was a funny one of those worlds that collide, isn't it, where you came across us on the internet. We have a combined mission of unbugging work, and here we are on a podcast.
Yes, so fairly similar times. We both came up with as if we invented language, unfucking work.
Yeah, from very different directions, I think. But what's quite interesting is if you look on a popular online retailer's website, your podcast and my new book sit nice and comfortably next to one another when you put in the keywords. So, hopefully hopefully we're starting something.
Yes, I think the more the merrier on this mission, because it's fairly broken, I would say.
Absolutely.
Concept of work.
There's a lot to look at.
There is. There is. We need people from all different areas to jump on board the unfucking work bandwagon and help nudge it towards the sort of a better place, I suppose.
And one of the sort of points I make in the book really is that it applies to everyone. I think what we hear and read about is very sort of polarized in the sense of, I'm writing from the perspective of being one of the people over here who's got everything right. I've been a great member of staff. I've been a really committed employee. I've been a great boss. But it's all the idiots over there who've got it all wrong, and they're creating this terrible world of work for us, and it's almost setting it up like it's a battle. Well, actually, when I look back through my sort of 30 years plus of my career, I know I've done some stupid things, and I know that I've been a good boss and a bad boss, and I've been a good employee and a bad employee. I've done some things that I sort of wince at now and think, why the hell did I make that decision or do that? We are all contributors to the problem, but in a positive way, that means we are all potential creators of the solution. So we should look at it in that sort of really, with that really positive mindset, is that we've all got something to give in this respect. It's not something that someone else is going to fix for us. We're not just going to wake up tomorrow and a think tank or a group has got together and done some focus workshops and they've sorted it all out. You're not even going to get that from presumably listening to your podcast or reading my book. It's about sort of actually understanding that we're all responsible, not just for where we got to, but where we can get.
Yeah. Can't wait around for some named guru to come and rescue us.
No, and a few have had a go, and that's all admirable, and it's all helps, all contributes to our understanding. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that sort of no one should bother in that sense anymore. But I think it's there's no sort of there's no kind of key to all of this. There's no piece of magic that's going to make everything make sense to us. We have to work it through across sort of multiple facets and aspects of work. In terms of the way we are ourselves and the way we relate to others as well. Yeah,
what works here is not going to work there as
Absolutely.
well. It's like, it worked here, so we're going to be able to just like replicate it in a different place. It just.
And we see a lot of the sort of conversations since the pandemic began as well about sort of in terms of we've become very internally focused, about what works for me. Yeah, I like to work in this way, therefore everyone should be able to work in this way because it works for me. So, again, we do need to. I think the sort of the time is very much now that we need to really start focusing on others around us and not just what we want and how we want to be. It's about all of us.
Yeah, can't just leave it to HR to fix, can we? Which some companies do.
Yeah.
or leave it to sort of building a new workplace. You know,
Mhm.
just spend millions of pounds and create a fantastic new workplace, and everyone's behaviour is going to change. You know, everyone's going to be fantastic, and we're all going to be innovative and productive, and it's, you know, we're going to build these networks and relationships. We're all going to come in to collaborate. Well, you know, you do actually have to do something as well as just create a workplace, and we have to look at the contribution that we make as well as individuals in relation to our relationships with everyone around us.
You told us a nice story in our pre-chat, if that's the thing, about a building supposedly fixing all of the problems, and your very sort of simple solution to the rules of work. Do you want to tell us that?
Yes, the dreaded sort of etiquette and protocol workshops that you will inevitably go through if you're moving location or your workplace is being renovated, in terms of the sort of do's and don'ts and the way that you're expected to behave. So in a sense, you're having these conversations in your existing workplace where you're behaving in a certain way, but you're talking about what happens when you sort of cross the line and you move into a new space, and there's a list of things that you have to do differently. But actually, you know, what I've sort of landed on over the last sort of several years, really, in working this through on a number of projects, is that as we often design workplaces around neighbourhoods, we just ask people to be a good neighbour, be neighbourly. We all instinctively know what that means, because we all live in you know, we're all sort of societal creatures. We all when we leave that workplace, we're good neighbours, hopefully. And so we don't have to explain the specifics. We don't have to issue rule sets, and you know, we're actually treating people very much like adults. You know, they've worked that out over the years for themselves, what being a good neighbour means, what being neighbourly means. And people are much more likely to respond to that, rather than thinking, right, you've given me a new rule set. Which ones of these can I break? You know, which ones of these can I get around? Because the minute you start telling people how they have to behave, they look for ways of, you know, just sort of messing with the system a little bit, and sort of just you know, upsetting things at the margins, but not necessarily.
I feel very attacked right now.
Yeah, so just be a good neighbour. And you know, I used this on a project with 3,500 people, and it worked tremendously well. And it took some time to understand that that's the right way to deal with it. And these were, you know, sort of probably at the younger end of the age spectrum as well. Sort of, you know, very intelligent people, but they just latched onto this and just understood exactly what we meant, and I think felt a huge degree of relief that they weren't being issued and beaten around the head with a rule set. And believe me, I've seen some terrible terrible rule sets. One sort of from Australia. This very big company issued a 50-page guide. It actually made the national press for being so ridiculous, but it told you the size of the picture that you could put on your desk. You weren't allowed to chew gum at the desk. I mean, the rules were just ridiculous, extensive. I mean, what does that say about the organisation? What does it say about the expectations of the way you're supposed to behave in the workplace? I mean, just the constraint was unbelievable. So
find that out.
It would make you go and get one of those huge tubs of chewing gum, wouldn't it? And just sit there working your way through it all day.
Yeah.
So, go on then, fire me if you dare. Sort of. Fired for chewing gum. But it's just, you know, unbelievable sort of that someone actually thought that was the right thing to do.
Yes. So we're going to ask this at the beginning, but we got waylaid as per usual. So tell us, Neil, if you could pick one thing from your book or from your life to unfuck work, what would that one thing be?
The one thing I think really is the sort of the essence, if you like, the overriding sort of challenge that I take on with the book, which is that we often don't realise it, and I'm trying to sort of just sort of help us understand and realise that this is going on, but. Our working life has been sort of codified really by a series of statements. They're symbols, they're signs as much as they are statements. But when we mesh them together, they actually create this environment in which we work, which is you know, to all intents and purposes nonsense in many instances, because actually when we start to unpick these statements and start to break them down into what they really mean and how we then might reframe them, we actually realize that we've all been complicit really in creating this mesh that surrounds our working lives. And let's not forget, when we're talking about work itself, that's a long way upstream. We're not talking about, how many days we work from home or anything. That's way downstream in considerations. We're talking about the very essence of our working life. These are issues that the pandemic, in some instances, has exacerbated. In some instances, maybe has made a small contribution to overcoming, but not much in respect of each one of these areas has changed. And it's easy to think that having been through the pandemic experience, and now that we're spending more time working from home, that somehow we've fixed all of this. We haven't fixed any of it. And so I think it is very much a sort of post-pandemic sort of idea as much as it was a pre-pandemic idea, but it's the meshing together of all of these statements, the sort of statements, things like, hard work never hurt anyone, we're an equal opportunities employer, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
See, I like that one, because James is you're the captain of strategy and I'm the captain of culture, so I get to eat him for breakfast. So it's my standard joke, but that's the only reason why I like that one. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, maybe just having breakfast together is the right way to do it. I mean, which is pretty much the outcome. You see, if I'd have known about that, I probably would have put that in the book. So we should have had a conversation a long time ago. But it's so for me, it's the sort of the insanity really behind all of these combined phrases that because we'll find ourselves saying these things. I wouldn't mind betting that if we look at each one of these 12 statements, anyone listening to this podcast, if they think back over the last couple of years of their working life, they'll probably think, I probably said that at some point, or I heard it somewhere.
Yes.
Teamwork makes the dream work. People are our greatest asset. And one of my favourites actually, which I think is sort of very modern, is we're like a big startup. God, if I had £1 for every time I heard that, going into a
nobody knows what they're doing.
40, 50-year-old company, an established massive global business. And so we're like a big startup. What's that actually telling you? Let's unpick that statement and let's look at what's behind it. And really, if you knew what was behind that, and if you really knew what that statement meant, would you ever dream of saying it again? And so realistically, what I've done here is I've taken each one of these one by one, unpicked them, and then put them back together again in a way that I think will work for us in the future, and helps us to then understand how we might make that contribution to creating a better working life for ourselves and for all of those around us.
Yeah, one of them really stuck out for me is you can't manage what you can't measure. Literally, that was my master's in occupational psychology.
Wow. Did you agree with that statement, or did you?
Well, that's what we were trained to believe, because I'm like, you can't. But the problem is you can't measure people. So our entire profession is there to measure people, and people are beautifully unable to be put in boxes.
But these ideas are all just sort of huge sticks that we beat everything with. There is absolute necessity to measure some things in our working lives and in business and in organizational sort of environments. Absolutely. This is not an attempt to completely diss measurement and to say that measurement is not important. What I'm trying to do in these respects is say that it's not important for everything. And actually, if you use that as a sort of yardstick, if you like, to use the sort of similar metaphor, but then effectively you're gonna come across a lot of problems. And if we start to unpick it, we start to see all the different areas in our working lives where you shouldn't be measuring it, and by measuring it, we're actually negatively impacting it. So it's understanding that balance between what needs to be measured and actually what needs some freedom and some white space around it in order to sort of live and grow. Yeah, absolutely. Some more white space than less in some instances, but but absolutely, it's not the sort of be all and end all. But I've heard it many times. You can't measure it, can't manage it. So how are we going to measure it? Well, let's step back for a little bit and actually wonder why we should be measuring it at all. If you think about a lot of the sort of crap work we do, particularly in sort of corporate environments. I mean, the amount of times that I've sort of inherited areas of responsibility or teams, and they've said, we do this monthly report. It's like, well, why'd you do it? Well, we've done it every month. And
it's because we always have done it.
We do it because we have to submit it. And how long does it take you to do it? It takes about 3 days each month to do this report. And when was the last time anybody actually asked you a question about this report? Well, not for a long time. do you ever have a meeting about this report to talk about what you're going to do with that information? Well, no, but this is what we do. So we have to do this report, and got all these data and all these pie charts and graphs. And he says, well, let's try something. Yeah, let's not submit it this month and
See what happens.
Yeah. And you can blame me because I've just taken over the function. You can just say, in my naivety, I suggested that we don't submit this report this month. And and the last time I remember this happening, no one said a word, and so the report just disappeared because no one needed it. It was utterly pointless. It was a complete distraction. But we think we ought to be doing all of this because that's what people do in corporate life.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to dismantle here, really, is are all these, the whole series, and I've actually got probably 3/4 of the way through compiling a sort of a second set, because I thought I'd got them all, but actually others keep emerging. But this is a complex mesh of sort of codified practices that we need to take apart and we need to rebuild.
The unfucking work too.
It could be. I do actually say in the very back, look out for volume 2. And I thought, well, it's a bit of a contradiction because I've said like these are the 12 statements, and I think, well, so I'm giving away the fact that I've made this contradiction, whether anyone picks up on that or not. But I thought, well, they're kind of self-contained, so it does sort of does make it possible that there would be a volume 2, if that is anyone really likes, appreciates, or reads volume 1.
It makes sense. But what struck me as well is that the language at times what it made me reflect on is they're almost blanket statements as though something is fact. So the example I have it's the chapter on we trust our people. Immediately, if you say to someone, we trust our people, I thought, well, I know that's not true because in this instance, this manager said this to this person and whatever. So the idea that stating something that is as black and white as that, instead of say we build trust, or it's actually not something that's been achieved necessarily. And can you ever achieve that? So actually this process of building towards something or creating something, being neighborly. It's not that we have the best neighborhood in the country. It's we're creating a sense of neighborhood, and we operate as neighborly as we can.
And we're not going to always get it right.
But we know that neighbors fight, don't we? There's trees overhanging my fence, Dave. It's about time you got that cut back.
And trust is a great one, because with hybrid working, what we really need to make hybrid working successful is lots of trust. Well, we've always needed trust. It's not something that we've just discovered. It's not something that someone came up with this idea of actually trusting each other. Therefore, would that be a really nice little building block for hybrid working? We've always needed to trust one another, and we rarely have in a corporate environment, because
like control.
People come into the corporate environment as individuals. They have their own individual interests, pursuits, agendas, and then there are collective agendas and pursuits at play. Every organization I've ever worked in, I've always had someone say to me at some point, gosh, this place is so political. It's like, well, yes, because humans. Individuals are looking after their own interests and themselves and their livelihoods and their sort of career trajectories, etc. And so trust has always been an issue. So for an organization to say we trust our people, my response to that would be, well, tell me how that plays out. Give me some examples of how you trust your people. But also, in this instance, find examples where something's gone wrong, where you haven't trusted your people, and what did you do about that? How did you respond to that? And as we all know, building trust takes a long time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of outcomes in order for trust to be present, and we can destroy trust in an instant. So this huge sort of process of building, it's almost like a sandcastle, isn't it? We can run right through it in seconds and destroy it. So just to blanket say we trust our people, it does warrant some examination.
This form tells me that you don't trust me.
Yeah. Absolutely, and the fact that you need 3 signatures above my level because just basically says
it's like I can't even buy a pen.
I know. I'm saying that organisations are, the processes and structures within organisations are specifically designed to stop people spending any money, and stop making decisions and stop committing the organisation to things. And you have to fight really hard for money. And you have to fight really hard to get things approved, because everything is working against you. There is that's an institutional lack of trust. So to then say we trust our people, well, you don't, because you don't let me make the decisions I need to make, having brought me into this organisation, given me this role, given me this remit. You're not letting me do what it is you said you wanted me to do. So
you literally just described my last job before I thought, look at this for a bunch of bananas and went self-employed. It's like, why am I even here? You say no to everything.
But in organisations of, whether we sort of think about it or not, but they're fundamentally designed to stop things happening, and it's almost like a battle of wills. Well, if you want it enough and you believe in this enough, you'll push through these barriers that we set up. It's almost like a test, really. See how much you want this, see how much you believe in this before we really will actually listen to you.
And you wonder why people disengage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, nah, it's too hard. I can't be arsed with this. I'm just going to go watch Netflix. Leave me alone.
So trust has always been vital. It always will be vital. It's got, yes, you do need trust to make hybrid working work, but I don't think you need any more trust than you ever needed before to make hybrid working work. You just need trust within groups of people and within organizations, and you need it to be exhibited. You need to see trust happening. You need to feel trust happening. And that's not just in the way that people relate to one another, but as we referenced, it's in the systems and processes that you design. Because everything is designed for the couple of percentage risk that something might go wrong, rather than the sort of 98% chance that things will go really well and will happen the way you want them to.
Yeah, sometimes when you read some of these policies, you're thinking, crikey, what went so wrong that that's now in this policy?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of those policies have been founded on something going horribly wrong somewhere along the line.
Yes.
Rather than something going right. Most policies are a response to a problem. And I think a lot of the hybrid working policies that we'll see organizations developing now, where they're starting to sort of understand, well, okay, we've recommended that people come in 2 or 3 days a week. So what happens if they don't? What happens if they don't and they're still doing a really good job? What do we do? Are they disciplined, or what's the sanction? And, or should we make it a compulsory 2 or 3 days a week? And then what happens if they don't? And what happens if they don't because they've got a really good reason for not doing it, and we've actually got a really good outcome, and they've been a fantastic colleague and a fantastic employee, but they just don't happen to have complied with the policy we set up. So I think the whole world of hybrid working will have created a massive amount of this sort of trust challenge within organizations. But at the same time, you'll hear people in those organizations saying, we need to have trust if hybrid working is going to work.
It's going to be on the wall as well. Trust.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that's been twisted in neon and stuck on the wall that will probably appear in the pages of this book.
Yeah, it's like, right, let's think it's obviously like the opposite in here. So they have to put it on the walls.
Yeah. Because we don't actually trust people to take this on board unless we put it on the wall.
No,
so
make it pretty.
Put it in big letters, because we have to remind them every single minute of their working day that this is important to us. So if we keep saying it over and over again, they might just get it. Well, we kind of already got it because we're human beings. We do understand this. If you just left us to actually, explore those relations with one another, then maybe you will see that you can trust us. And so, this is there's no simple acid test in any organization for this. It's hugely complex, but this is just one of these little subjects amongst many. If we can't get these things right, then how are we going to fix anything downstream? We've got no chance. If we can't fix work, we can't fix all the outcomes of work. And that's why your podcast, my book, they talk about work, not workplace or anything that emanates from work, but work itself. That's what we have to fix. Absolutely.
So yes, unfucking work with an asterisk in, just to keep on the right side of the people that don't like swearing, is available on all over the place. If just you'll find it if you're looking.
Yeah, and actually quite interesting. Internet search engines are quite comfortable with an asterisk. So
They are.
easy to find. Easy to find your podcast. Easy to find my book.
Yes. We'll put links in the show notes as well.
Fantastic.
Well, we're wrapping up there.
Yes.
That was Michelle's nod.
Yes, you do your bit.
We're just getting started, aren't we?
I know, but you've got a meeting now.
Always got a meeting. There's always a meeting somewhere. Yeah. I've just pushed it back actually. But yeah, because I want to make sure we wrap this up properly, because I think this is, this to me is really the start of something.
Well, we can have another one. We can, it's our podcast. We do what we want.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Neil Usher Part 2.
Neil Usher Part 2, yes. But that's been a really tight subject to get people interested in and excited about, and looking forward to your book by the time you're listening to this, it will be September. So
yes,
by the end of the month, it'll be out.
Yes, you might want to do a little shout out to your co-creators. Neil?
Yes, so Perry Timms and Kirsten Buck were really instrumental in this book coming together. It was a collaboration with the two of them. They were fantastic, both coming from very different sort of perspectives. And Perry's firm PCHR is tremendous too, because he absolutely, with his firm, he lives and breathes everything he talks about, and all the sort of subjects that are covered in the book. So we've had some great conversations over the years about these things, and we're both very mindful that it was time to sort of really start taking down some of the bullshit that we repeat on a day-to-day basis and start unpicking it and putting it back together properly.
And the problem is, once you've seen this stuff, it's really hard to let it go.
Absolutely, that's the hope anyway, is that there's no going back.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us, Neil, and we'll no doubt talk again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to be here, and great conversation. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for climbing aboard for this episode. You can find further information in the show notes. If you want to hire or become a work pirate, get started at workpirates.com.